Dear friends, I think the 3 minutes of courtesy that we always leave to let anyone have the time to receive the email in case of a late last-second registration has passed. I love to see so many of you today and so many friends of us at illuminem, so many friends of the topic of sustainable procurement. And again, the warmest good welcome. These discussions are probably the best way to advance, to share knowledge on things that matter. And before I introduce the topics of our discussion, it's my pleasure, it's my honor to welcome the 4 amazing guests that are with us today. Allow me to start with our lady, with Sarah. And Sarah is a partner at IBM Consulting. She's actually the leader in the Americas for sustainable business transformation services. And she's a global expert in the resilience supply chains. Sarah's thought leadership has been featured in various publications, Forbes, Economist Impact, M&A Science, and today at illuminem. Sarah holds an MBA and a Master of Science from Boston University, and she will explain us the future trends in sustainable procurement. Welcome, Sarah. It's our pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Second, I have here on my right, Federico. Federico is the founder and CEO of Traent, a pioneering company developing blockchain tech built upon the vision that the relationship between businesses will be centered on transparency. Federico is a veteran in the business space. His career was first in the equipment industry. He achieved the award of Air Stanton Global Achievement Award for his contribution to the label industry, and today is also one of the most active leaders on ESG worldwide. Welcome, Fede.
Ciao.
Third, here with us is Malcolm. Malcolm is the executive director of the US market management at Osborne Clarke, the world-leading law firm. Malcolm is second to none in understanding client businesses, their challenges, their practical opportunities. He will explain us the advancement of US companies in sustainable procurement with a comparison with the European market and the rest of the world. Welcome, Malcolm.
Hi, how you doing?
It's great to have you here. I'm doing fine for the occasion. And last but not least, we have to thank Jay for not only being an incredible speaker and for being a business pioneer, but also for being the patron of today's discussion. You know, at illuminem, we always anchor any weekly discussions on the vision of one founder of the world that is helping and supporting our activities. So Jay is the founder and CEO of Symbiotic, a New York-based startup disrupting channel sales for good and specializing in branding social impact in procurement. Symbiotic aims to become the Amazon social impact distribution, a uniquely branded challenge of disruptive purpose where every purchase equals giving back to society and the environment. Jay will explain us about social impact buying and the risk related to that. Welcome, Jay, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. So glad to be here with everybody today.
So, my friends, it's great to see so many of you here. It's great to gather, discussing a topic that is not taking the front page of a newspaper, a topic that is so important. It's literally how the world is changing, but at the same time is left on the sidelines. And seeing so many of you probably is the best recognition that this discussion is actual and so relevant. So what are we discussing today? I'm probably starting with a question. If we are ready to revolutionize procurement, are you ready to make a lasting impact? This discussion is meant to see the future trends in ethical procurement, philanthropic procurement, and finding a balance, probably a lasting balance between profit and purpose. Without further ado, myself is the founder of illuminem and a friend of each of you in this community. I'm Andrea. And I start by asking Sarah, one question that is probably relevant for all of us. So Sarah, what are the major levers for multinationals to act, not to discuss, to act towards sustainable procurement?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Andrea. I think I always start with the why, right? Why sustainable procurement? And we're seeing a lot of good reasons why we should move towards sustainable procurement and purpose-led procurement. I think the first one is certainly for long-term shared value with suppliers, right? As consumers and customers in general, B2B customers, start looking at the world through a different lens, right? Through the climate crisis that we have, very, very severe weather patterns that we're experiencing that are disrupting a lot of things. Certainly, consumers and customers in general are demanding sustainability. So to not have a sustainable business is really to put yourself in a bad place for future-proofing your company. So certainly from an ROI perspective, sustainable procurement is the way to go. The second thing is we see sustainable procurement as a way that is critical to gather trust and compliance from your suppliers, right? As we see a lot of regulators worldwide starting to move towards looking at supply chain as a source of risk. We know that having that level of trust with your suppliers and having that level of compliance with your suppliers is really critical. I think of the German Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, for example, that right now, effective this year, forces companies to look down their value chain and understand who are you shaking hands with? Are they good players? Are they? Do they have any human rights issues in their value chain? Do they have any environmental issues that they're associated with? And so going forward, in order to have that level of trust and compliance with these regulators, you need to have sustainable procurement. And then lastly, I think it's a matter of resilience, right? Having that connectivity with your suppliers gives you an amazing insight into what is what is coming down the pike in your own supply chain. How do the political tensions that are going on, environmental issues and other issues affect your own supply chain? I think if any of us had a vision on what was going to happen with the Russia-Ukraine war, supply chains would not have been as disrupted as they are now. So having that foresight to see what's coming down the pike in terms of risk is certainly a huge area. Now, your question was, what are the levers? I think, there are different levers, including decarbonizing your supply chain, and so reducing energy consumption, reducing pollution. There's certainly an angle on circularity, so reuse, recycling, refurbishing, etc. There's a view of how do you work with your suppliers to protect air, water, soil, and biodiversity. And then lastly, protecting human rights and ensuring fairness, right, within your supply chain, whether that's through supplier diversity, ensuring no corruption, ensuring that there are no anti-competitive behaviors. So I think those are the key levers for sustainable procurement and sourcing.
Thank you, Sarah. We love to hear your perspective, and probably we will go back to your reflection on the trust and resilience that seems to be the secret of this why, and also seems to be the way ahead in a world that is changing so fast. The next question then goes to Malcolm. Malcolm, as you know, my friends, he has a very unique perspective. He is at the head of one of the world's largest law firm. So I'm actually curious to ask, given the importance that Sarah explained, how is it advancing, this change? Is it happening faster in the US? Is it happening faster in Europe? So where are we now in sustainable procurement?
Well, yes. Well, thanks for having me. And it is an interesting dynamic to look at the differences. As you mentioned, we are one of the largest law firms, but interestingly, we do not practice US law. So what we do is talk a lot to US clients about their global approach. And these global forces that Sarah has spoken about are affecting everybody, but in different ways and at different times. We very much focus on helping clients through the challenges of the new economy, digitalization, decarbonization, and urban dynamics, how people working and living. And all of these come together in their supply chain. And those issues are hitting all sectors. You might think that areas such as retail and consumer, it would be pretty obvious to look at supply chain there. But even in financial services and tech, their footprint of topics that Thuo was talking about in terms of power generation, etc., is being a focus. But I think if you look at those drivers, the consumer driving it, the investor driving more change, and the political regulatory forces, the US has a different dynamic to Europe. Whilst you can look at the consumer driving US sportswear manufacturers to look at the child labor they might have had in Asia problems some years ago, it's not quite as dynamic as it is in Europe. Certainly in terms of the investors, some of the European pension plans were much harder drivers of getting companies to look at sustainability and these issues ahead of the US. And certainly if you look at the political regulatory environment, it's been a trend for a long time when the politicians and regulators start to get involved. But even there, you'd say that the US regulatory environment is a little behind, but undoubtedly catching up. So what we're seeing very much is, yes, it's a little behind, but it's interesting how the US can learn the lessons taken from Europe and how they're going to adapt and are catching up rapidly. If you look at the regulatory framework, whether it be the Inflation Reduction Act, bringing more supply back into the US, shortening sort of distribution chains, whether it be the SEC introducing disclosure rules, they're certainly trying to catch up on some of those regulatory points. Even though I think EU has got a long list of upcoming regulation, whether it be the French EU looking at carbon footprint for technology firms, the EU is looking to have rules around proving that the deforestation-free aspect. So a lot more detail on those regulations in Europe than the US, but that force is going in there. And what we're seeing the US firms looking for is a follow-on of what we've seen in Europe. People first look for knowledge, understanding, data. Where is my supply chain? Am I on top of it? Do I know what's going on? And taking a risk-based approach to it. Do you really worry that supplier who gave you 10 t-shirts for a corporate event was using wrong type of cotton versus what is your main distribution channel doing about greening their vehicle fleet? You've got to take a prioritized approach. The second thing they're looking at is around control. They're putting in clauses, and we're doing a lot of work with clients to put in place their supplier clauses, trying to, as far as be collaborative and partnership approach, but actually holding people accountable through the responsibilities in the contract. And then what I think is most exciting is people looking to actually impact change and collaborate with their vendors about, can they do things differently? Can they work different and create different types of products that will actually make a real difference in the sustainability, and really driving it more into the impact front rather than just doing what is required. As I often say, there's a whole spectrum of drivers, there's a whole spectrum of answers, whether it be from do the minimum to keep me out of jail, all the way through to make it a virtue and do the most you can and make it a differentiate, change yourself to become a differentiator. And that's what we're starting to see, the shoots of that approach come into the US.
So many good points, like from advancement of confidence to the willingness of people to get there. And maybe since you told me that Europe seems to be, at least in this race, a bit ahead, maybe because of regulation, maybe because you said of pension spending requirements, I actually bring into the discussion an only European speaker today, that is Federico. Just for the parenthesis of Federico is based in Italy, or Malcolm is on the west coast of the US, Jay is in New York, and Sarah is in Chicago today. So Fede, maybe we go to you. First of all, you see this happening more on this side of the Atlantic, and let's go even more on your own specialty. You're a veteran in tech revolutions. So how is the future of Web3? How is the revolution of tech changing this procurement game for the better?
Yeah, you have to consider that you cannot make big changes without being sustained by let's say, a performing technology which changes also the rules of the game. One of the big things that is happening is this famous blockchain that at the beginning was only used for the coins, but the problem using it by the coins has had two big problems. One is a reputation problem. Many people have a sort of blacklist for the coins. It's not considered a good thing. It's not considered. At the same time, the technology blockchain had a lot of problems to be used in the enterprise business. A lot of transparency problems, a lot of efficiency problems. So you had to have disruptive technologies to be able to use blockchain for the enterprise. Now, if we listen to the words that we have heard from Sarah and we have heard from Malcolm, we have some recurring words which are there. One is the trust factor, one is the control factor, one is the accountability factor, and all these things are typical of a blockchain process. The blockchain is just giving between people who don't know each other the trust that what they are presenting is credible, is authentic, is validated, and can be controlled from outside. So this is the first thing that sustainability can take advantage of from new blockchain and Web3 technology. So what you can have is irrevocable truth, which is not confirmed by yourself as an auto-declaration, but it is confirmed by third parties with opposed interests. So if you declare that you are buying your energy from a sustainable source, it's not you who is declaring, but is you and your source who are declaring you are accountable for this. And your declaration is forever. So what happens is that a first big step to sustainability is to be able to trust the information. Too many times happened the greenwashing element, or too many times there was a problem in considering the sustainability reports really efficient and really trustable. The second element that blockchain can add is efficiency. What we were talking about, control. In the blockchain, you have this new thing which is called smart contracts, where you can organize actions which are totally automated and totally irrevocable. So the whole process can be under control, and you can have sustainable practices which will be enforced and disciplined in a proper way. So you have less choices and you have a much more clear flow for all your sustainability practices. At the same time, you have more possibilities to see the transparency of your supply chain. At the moment, in our general business, you see your first tier, your tier 1 of your suppliers, but you have less visibility on tier 2 or tier 3, which means maybe the aluminum you're buying is not buying, you don't buy it directly from your source, but you buy from someone who buys it from somewhere else. The good advantage of blockchain is also that this possibility is not only that you can track everything which is happening, but you can also make the second tier and the third tier accountable for what the guy is saying. So at the same time, the whole chain can trust. At the same time, you will be able to choose your suppliers based on your particular advantages. And then there is also supply and or their sustainability declarations. And then there is also something that people do not consider a lot. Financial companies, I mean, equity partners, VCs, they are putting a lot of money now on ESG companies, but their fear is that that particular company they are putting money in is not really reliable in the data that they are sharing. So if you have the possibility using blockchain to prove in an absolutely certain way that your company is behaving that way, you will probably have more access to credit. You will have an open access to credit, and you will be able to take money out of the market, not only from traditional suppliers of money, let's say, but also from the market in a different way. So you can transform your sustainability data into an asset, which becomes the asset of the company. And this is another possibility which is given by technology. And before it was just not possible because everybody was in his own silos. Blockchain changes from silos to transversal, and the information can be disciplined, can be truthful, can be authentic through many different actors. And this is only possible through the blockchain.
Very interesting, Fede, and I see you touching with your hands this transformation, this change that is happening. So probably like I can recap here, right? You mentioned that there is a complete change in the trust of the information. Second, in the efficiency of making an agreement today, the smart contracts, the best examples, and also in the power of reaching a transparency up to the second, third layers, right? The tier 3 suppliers, the example of the aluminium you made, right? So let me reconcile a bit of the views, and I bring back the floor to you, Malcolm, right? On one side, you just mentioned before, right? You look at this global picture, thanks to the Osborne Clarke reach, say, in Europe, you guys are ahead in this change because of regulation. Fede mentioned you back. Yes, look, technology is changing everything here. So how are we reconciling these two views? Is there like really this gap between the two regions? And probably like what can we say that is happening now between a tech change so fast and at the same time a regulation change equally fast?
Well, I think the technology is enabling the regulatory to, I'll go back to Federico's point around verification, you know, the old trust but verify approach. If you look at the regulators, greenwashing, claims made by manufacturers, etc., is becoming really in their focus for what to do. So everyone is scrambling to close that gap of real validation of what they're doing in those credentials, allowing it. And that those claims can only be justified by data and information, and that has to be technology. Although we have seen some elements of collaboration. So, what, you know, why does every pharmaceutical firm have to go out and do site visits to the one manufacturer in Indonesia that supplies them all? Is there a collaboration? Is there a clearing house of that data to be done? I think technology will enable that. So I see them as not conflicting. I see them as being very supportive to provide clarity where you've got data, it's clear and concise and accurate. And it's one of the challenges, and maybe I think one of the inhibitors to progress is everyone's measuring different things. There's no standardization on a lot of these points. And until we get to that common topology of what we're talking about, it's going to be very difficult to get to real consistency and belief and confidence and trust that we've spoken about in those metrics that will enable us to stand behind the regulations.
Thank you, Malcolm. Maybe now I call back into this point of Sarah, so we can complete the first of the two parts of this webinar by asking you, Sarah, you have the fortune of having a global perspective as well, thanks to the work at IBM. So what are the other future trends in sustainable procurement, and especially in the case of multinational, what is changing today?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think I first of all, I agree with Federico, right? Transparency especially through blockchain, because of that immutable ledger, is something that we see a lot of companies moving towards. We did a couple of years ago a project for a company called Pharma Connect, where we were able to connect coffee retailers to the farmers, actually connect the consumers of the coffee to the farmers. So through the scan of a QR code on a coffee cup, the consumer was transported all the way to the farmer who grew their coffee beans, and they were able to tip the farmer in-app, which was amazing. You think of the brand equity that type of technology provides you, and it's really revolutionary. So blockchain, I don't think is going anywhere, and I think is certainly one of the future trends. As a technology company, we're super excited about AI as well, right? We unveiled Watson X in our Think forum last week, and we see AI playing a huge role in procurement and sourcing going forward. As we think of things like decision orchestration, quickly making the right decision that's going to get you to net zero, that's going to get you to a lot of these other ESG goals that companies have, AI is going to be one of the key levers that are used to do that. We partner with a company called Freedom, for example, FRDM, that uses AI to essentially map out your supply chain without using blockchain. So they are able to use big data and AI models to predictively tell you who are you shaking hands with down your supply chain. And if you think about how complex global supply chains are, you have suppliers that might not be able to afford blockchain to connect to you. You need this type of technology to actually tell you who are you working with out there, who's on a sanctions database, for example, somewhere that you should not be working with. And so AI is certainly one of the key places that I see really revolutionizing sustainable procurement and sustainable sourcing going forward.
Wonderful, and I think we're all fan here of AI, and I love the example, Sarah, the example of Freedom is they're also friends using AI mapping, the example of Watson X just launched. And maybe the question is now natural. It's for you back, Fede. You are the tech visionary in our small group. So which opportunities are there for the entrepreneurs, for the innovators in making procurement sustainable?
I was more reflecting to Sarah's words now, and I was thinking, yes, AI is absolutely important, and it's going to change the world in many different ways. But at the same time, just consider that blockchain will become a standard. It's not going to be more expensive than any transaction between people. I mean, it's not something that people will afford or not afford. They will just use it, and they will use blockchain as a sort of enabling technology for ethical behaviors. So what is going to happen in the future as a technology, let's say, prediction, is that people will have the information that now is somehow dispersed in the world, just disciplined in a better way, and you can trust this information is authentic, verifiable, and transparent, and usable, and it can become an asset. At the same time, it's not going to cost more, because the new technologies allow you to have no environmental impact, no additional cost. So it's going just to be another layer to the interactions between people. And this will be very good also for sustainability and for all procurement projects on sustainability, because then you will have provenance verification, waste reduction, circular economy, carbon accounting. Everything will be easier, faster, and coming from data which are already present in the companies. But as soon as they decide to be accountable for the data they have, they can show this data, and then they can use these data to have a much better efficiency. So you can choose your suppliers in a better way, etc., etc., etc. I don't want to go deep dive on that, but the opportunities are for every single interaction of a company, which always has an environmental impact, a social impact, and a governance impact. So the technology now, which is going to be available for everyone. Now you have, it's typical, the tech companies like ours will come out with the most beautiful solution. It will take a lot of time for the people to understand the solution, and then it will be a ramp up very fast. So there will be a very slow adoption, and then all of a sudden, if you look at the Gartner table, they say that in 1 year, blockchain and automation and digital automation, like the one that you told before from AI, will become the norm in the industry. But it will be a very fast ramp up. So we need to be able to associate the sustainability and the technology together, because this will create enormous efficiency.
Yeah. And I think my comment was more about the cost to ramp up, right? As we talk to this first mile suppliers, they're certainly saying, we don't have connection to a computer. We're not going to put all our data somewhere. It's certainly a cost for them to get there, but completely agree that blockchain is certainly the way of the future.
Yeah.
I think we see the role of a procurement manager being very different these days than it used to be. They're a part data scientist, they're a part lawyer, they're a part negotiator, relationship, part verifier, etc. Gone are the days of just what's your quality stats, what's your price. It's a lot more complex. And I think firms have got a challenge in actually upgrading their procurement departments to really make a difference and get ahead of the sustainability curve on that way.
It's getting so interesting, and I think you all touched the point of affordability, accessibility, say speed of this change, and I really and I really love to to mention all 3 points are equally important, right? If someone is cut out of the revolution automatically, it's not anymore a revolution, but it's just another small trends for the few. And in this sense, I think there is. Jay, you are naturally the best person to answer, right? Your company, Symbiotic, is working to make sustainable procurement accessible for all. As Sarah mentioned, the price is probably high at the beginning, but we're getting there. As Fede said, it will be the standard. So now I'm asking you why we need this social impact binding and why we need it now for all.
I think from my perspective as a concerned citizen of the earth, business as usual clearly needs to be disrupted to forego dystopian futures. All hands on deck, all systems check, and all mediums too. We all have a part to play. And if we can collaborate and use the cutting edge new technologies such as blockchain and AI to improve procurement, we can slowly shift better outcomes one transaction at a time in all outcomes. It's now or never.
I love this point, and my friends probably is now or never, and I think the wind is probably now. So let's make it happen. If you allow me, since I have a long list of prepared questions, but I love to see that 6 of our colleagues in the call already asked some of these questions. I would take some of them, some of their questions to ignite our discussion even further. I would start with the last one. It's coming from Daniel in Berlin, and we're talking about chief sustainability officers. So this is probably one of the revolutions in the organigrams of many companies. And I was discussing recently how the trend is changing. Some companies like Apple have the CSO in charge of procurement. For example, they have in charge of purchasing renewable energy, while in many others, the CSO are not yet having a portfolio function, not yet having the right to purchase. So the question says, should chief sustainability officer be involved in procurement process, or is procurement that should only report the impact to the chief sustainability officers? Who wants to answer this one?
May I just very quick? I will be very fast. It's related to the geography. If you are talking about Nordic countries, they are extremely careful about sustainability. This would be probably accepted by the management. In US, I see it more difficult, for instance, and in Europe, depending on the country. In Germany, maybe, in other countries, less. In Southern European some yes, some no, but I think it is related to the geography and to the culture and the acceptance of sustainability.
Maybe let me bring into the discussion also Malcolm. With Malcolm, we are working at illuminem on an ESG data platform, right? So we are looking at a lot of this issue within the legal side of organization. So what is your opinion, Malcolm?
Well, I would agree with Federico that there's no one size fits all. It does depend on the company, etc. What is key is that sustainability impacts procurement and procurement impacts sustainability. You can't run them as two silos. And what I think has been increasingly aware is that the sustainability goes beyond your own firm, but to look at the sustainability of suppliers and other suppliers. So I think it's an evolution. Once people understand that, sustainability is not just what I do, it's what my ecosystem does, then it becomes clearer that those two must be integrated. But as Federico says, it's case by case, which way around.
I think the next question, this comes from New York, so directly in your city, Jay, and ask, what do you think are the main barriers to mainstream sustainable procurement in companies, and how can they be overcome? Maybe Sarah, you're the best one to answer.
Sure, happy to start. I think there are a lot of barriers when we speak to different chief procurement officers, chief sourcing or supply chain officers. There are a lot of different answers, but we hear. But some of the main misnomers are sustainable procurement is expensive. And that's not always the case. There is a green premium that I think we all have to deal with, but it's understanding what is the value that you're getting. I think that the second biggest problem that I've heard more and more coming up is really about knowledge, right? Sustainability is new. I think it's one of the skills of the future. A lot of people who are procurement experts historically are not necessarily sustainability experts. So, we have to start the conversation at 101. What does sustainable procurement mean? And so from this perspective, I think talent and upskilling is certainly one of the second big barriers. And then the third is just understanding what sustainability means within an organization, right? Sustainability means different things in different industries and different organizations. So having that understanding of what is material to your organization, what is material to the sustainability function is certainly critical. If I go back to the previous question, which was who owns sustainability, the chief sustainability officer or procurement, I would say it's all, right? I see the chief sustainability officer as the quarterback, kind of orchestrating everything across the organization, but each function has its own role to play in sustainability, right? You have green IT in IT, you have sustainable procurement in procurement, you have diversity, equity, and inclusion in HR, and these are just examples, they're not exhaustive. So certainly figuring out what is material in your industry, your function, your organization is certainly, I think, one of the third biggest barriers, but it's something that is coming up more and more. And I think hopefully by this time next year, this will be something that's not an issue anymore, right? Everyone will understand what sustainable procurement is, and all of us will be purchasing sustainably.
These answers, Sarah. From the premium to the to the issue of knowledge, right? Understanding. And here I see that as a third question I allow myself to pick from the audience is Anna in Paris that asks us, how can we better educate, as the point of Sarah, how can we better educate the next generation of procurement professionals, of procurement leaders about the importance of sustainability? Sarah, maybe we restart from you.
Yeah, I think it has to be from the top down. I had the pleasure of moderating a panel last week that had a number of leaders in sustainability, and one of the people that was speaking on the panel was the chief sustainability officer of Glanbia, and he said that what he wants to do is not just build a sustainability organization that he leads. He wants to have all the associates in Glanbia view themselves as sustainability people. And so there needs to be a cultural shift across organizations where everyone understands what sustainability is. And I think it will come from upskilling, so active training. It will also come from a cultural shift of the language that we use within companies. And I think it will come from top-down mandates, so how leadership leads with sustainability at the front, and then embedding that through everything that we do, including our performance KPIs and how an organization is run.
Thank you for this, Sarah. If any of you wants to add, feel free to chip in. Otherwise, please, Fede. Otherwise, I take the next question.
Very fast. I totally agree with Sarah, and we should add also transforming sustainability into equity. I mean, the people, a company which is sustainable and can prove the sustainability with figures should take advantage, economical advantage, transforming this into equity. So it looks more expensive, but it is coming back to in the form of equity for the company. So this education should be present in all the training courses to be able to transform sustainable data and authentic data into equity. At the same time, consider sustainability as an efficiency enhancer. So as an efficiency factor. So then you can train the people not only to be good people, but also to be very good business people using sustainability as a driver.
One last point to add to that, also the CEO compensation tied into ESG metric could be a very good point of raising salary for leaders.
I think we've seen it, sort of a cultural impact. You know, in same with DEI, your company doesn't become ESG friendly just by appointing one person and say, oh, go and fix it, get us a few ticks in the boxes. It has to come from board level down through the organization, from the employees feeling connected and enabled and empowered to have an input and insight. And that's when you're getting it right, when you've got that cultural approach to all sort of decision making, of it not being the only factor, but a factor of consideration in that. That's when you can really make a difference and turn that difference to a differentiator. It has to be authentic. There's no point putting it in one corner. Oh, we'll change our packaging to be recycled, and there you are manufacturing with a coal-based, power plant. You just can't do that.
And probably the point of Malcolm is one of the elephants in the room, right? Sometimes we often take our sustainability starting from the small things, but procurement is probably having an incredible advantage because it's number-based, right? We should start from the biggest item in our list, not from the least, or we are running the risk of doing the opposite of the equity that Fede mentioned, the risk of being greenwashing. We say, Jay, at illuminem, the future will be green or will not be. So maybe I go back to you with another of the amazing questions here. What are the risks of non-action?
I think we all know the risk of non-action is, like I said before, dystopian futures. It's now or never, and procurement has the power to buy services that enable sustainability through transaction, and we all have to do our part. But no action, for sure, we see where we're heading, and the road that needs to be disrupted for using business as a force of good. And that's why we're here to support this equation.
An ultimate question. I will now go back to you, Malcolm, since you are the first that started with this beautiful geographical perspective. We have been probably too Western-centric at the start of the call. Here I have Roger from Mexico that asks us, how do you see Mexico and Latin involved in this sustainable revolution?
Well, I think it has to be a global revolution, and we've all got our parts to play. And I think, that they're following on from the topics we've spoken about. It's about the individuals, the consumers in those locations, making it a priority, which is going to be difficult. They've got a lot of other priorities in many countries. it's about where the investment is going and making sure the investment in their countries is going to the right sustainable approaches and supporting those. And it's about having the right regulation and data accessibility. And if they get those framework pieces, they can actually really participate and help accelerate these changes. But everybody's got to play their part. And despite all of the recent events, etc., we still see a quite global economy. We do see a lot of independence on supply chains on multinationals. We do see companies coming out of the US and still going to Europe for business expansion and growth, going to Asia for the same models. So no location can do it in isolation, and we need those other organizations and countries to go on the journey with us around knowledge, transparency, regulation.
Only one tip, when you have transparency on your product, then you are able to sell it much better abroad. Mexico is very much exporter. So if they are able to have a very good set of data which are authentic, they can export much better because the people will rely on them. Not only sustainability, the sustainability carries with the sustainability data also the reliability and trustability of the company. So it's much better for the exports.
And then probably add the legal perspective of illuminem. As you know, we're informing the world on sustainability, and we have hundreds of thousands of users around all countries and continents. And I'm proudly to say today that Latin is our third geography. So despite not being an English-speaking region, is actually like we notice a penetration rate of our services, our reading services, but also our global ESG alliance, something we work with Traent that is simply doing great. So Roger, probably this is a quick answer. We, of course, agree there is a lot to do everywhere, but I think that Mexico, your Mexico and Latin are responding to the call. I take the last question, if you allow me, and then we are precisely on time at the 50s. And I probably take the question of the Scarlett George, maybe he's in the UK, and Scarlett points at your previous speech, Malcolm. The change in procurement role is not easy. It's not ticking another box. It's not like adding another item in your long to-do list at the end of the day. So here we need to integrate sustainability at the core of the function, at the core of the mission that a procurement officer needs to have. So probably for all of you, I'm asking, how can we make it happen? How can we make this change happen? And how can we make these procurement leaders empowered? I don't know if you want to start, Malcolm, or whoever wants to take this question.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. Where I've seen it get priority is companies that implement a scorecarding methodology that gets reviewed at board and senior executives, because it brings it out of the shadow and they're engaged. And I think Jay mentioned it before, compensation for CEOs, etc., along those metrics. But getting that scorecard together of where are we today with an impact analysis, sustainability, and where do we want to get to, that really empowers and gives air cover to that procurement sustainability challenge.
Brilliant. Now, to complete our good discussions, I'm not taking any additional question. Feel free to email any additional question to us at illuminem, and we will of course redirect to our speakers. I say, of course, thank you for being so many of you here. And now I give 60 seconds to each of our amazing panelists today to give us a final message and insight. And I would start from you, Sarah.
Sure. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be on this panel. I really appreciate it, Andrea. I would say, I think we're living in a really exciting time when we have the ability to change the course of history. And as procurement specialists, as sourcing specialists, we have the ability to impact, number one, the emissions that go around the world and that are involved in our supply chain. So I would just encourage everyone to take that on to be the change that you want to see, and to make sure that you are driving that change, because as Jay keeps reminding us, it's a matter of survival for all of us. And it's really an amazing opportunity to change the course of history for us and for future generations.
Thank you, Sarah. Fede, what do you want to add?
So is that to me?
Sorry for not having spoken loud enough.
So yeah, I think it is exciting. It's challenging. You know, this is not a straight road. There will be bumps and turns along the way. It's going to be a difficult one to navigate with the technology changes, the regulatory changes, etc. But I think as long as we keep in mind the eyes on the prize, as they say, at the end of the road, we will be able to get there. And it is exciting to be able to really make a difference, to make small steps, make a difference, and move forward. So I would just encourage people to get involved in the conversation, to ask, to connect, to learn, because what the challenge is today will not be the challenge in 3 years. And so let's keep the momentum going.
Thank you, Malcolm. We'll do our best to keep the momentum. Federico.
On my side, it comes to my mind that procurement is a big leverage to change the whole world, because through procurement, you can introduce ethical behaviors and the control of the ethical behaviors. And at the same time, this can go from top down and from bottom up. And if a company and enterprise can use systems which allow you to behave in a certain way, in a predictable way, in an ethical way, this can be a change which is not only for the sustainability of the planet, but also for the life of people. So procurement in a sustainable way and in a disciplined way will allow the people to work better together and also to live better together. Also having this common need to have a better planet together, but at the same time will help people to trust each other and rely on the world and on the process that has created the results.
Thank you, Fede. And Jay, now to you the honor of bringing this insightful discussion to a conclusion and sharing with us your final thoughts.
Well, thank you, everybody. I'm grateful to be here at the presence of sustainability and procurement. Thanks to the panel, thanks to the attendees, and thank you to illuminem. So Symbiotic has a solution in this space, and we're here to share that with you as a SaaS platform, social impact as a service that layers into procurement, distribution, and social impact, one transaction at a time. We connect motivated buyers looking for social impact and sustainability to sellers that are primed for profit and purpose over channel sales, addressing trillions of dollars of global spend by simply addressing the cost of doing business between buyer, procurement, and seller distribution, which is the commission at the transaction level. Symbiotic redistributes this commission from profit only to profit and purpose, and carves out social impact in the form of embedded philanthropy in support of customer-chosen nonprofit to direct alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals, every transaction at no added cost to the buy side. So we're here to test the premise: will leading with impact attract opportunity? And if so, we can connect fulfillment partners and distribution that win on the front end of procurement all of the necessary buying attributes by offering the promise of social impact in transaction. And again, only if we win that solution does the social impact ensue. Then we look to brand and map and prove social impact in transaction via smart contract blockchain technology. So we have an easy button, plug and play solution ready to go for the next economy using business as a force of good. And today we're here to launch a challenge. If we can't meet or beat your enterprise IT infrastructure requirements, we will gladly plant 100,000 trees on your behalf. And we will follow up with challenge details after the email. But really, we are a solution to find, IT distribution opportunities with the promise of social impact. And if we lead with impact, we believe we can use business as a force of good to help rebalance planetary inequities. And really grateful to be here and hopefully be a part of the next economy and help forge change, and with radical common sense and hope. Thank you, everybody.
It's now the time from me to say thank you to you all for taking the time, being together, engaging in this discussion. We have so many questions still coming, to literally caring for our future. And I also will conclude by saying thank you, Jay, for sharing your vision, making us understand that there is often like a good impact that awaits, not only a good profit that we need to achieve at all costs. Thank you, Fede, for your example, for your tech insights. Thank you, Malcolm, from bringing this unique global perspective of Osborne Clarke and your experience in so many companies, in the leadership of so many companies around the world in the US. And thank you, Sarah, for your example, for the perspective of IBM, and for all the good words you shared from the very beginning till the last questions. Now, please, dear friends, stay tuned with us at Illuminem. Many more insightful discussions await us, and I wish you all a beautiful evening or a beautiful afternoon, depending on your geography.